Today we're going to be showing you how to install the Superlift 3-inch lift kit with upper control arm on our 2019 Chevy 1500. Let's get started. Okay, so before you put your truck on jack stands, you're going to want to pop the hood and remove the inside strut mount nut. So you only have to do this on the passenger side. The driver's side, you can access it from underneath the fender. This is going to be an 18 millimeter. We're going to want to take this all the way off. Now that our truck is up on jacks, the first thing we're going to do underneath the fender is take off our ABS line brackets. So these are going to be 10 millimeter bolts. We're going to start with the one on the upper control arm. The next is going to be behind the spindle. Then we'll move on to the front side of the spindle. And the last ABS line bracket bolt is going to be on the front side of the spindle by the tie rod. Now that we have our ABS lines off, we're going to take our tie rod off. So we're going to take the nut off of the bottom. Then you're going to want to take a hammer and, without hitting the actual joint itself, smack around the spindle until it frees up. Like so. Now we're going to go back up to the upper strut mount. So we already have the nut off in the back, so now we have the two in the front. So we're going to go ahead and push this plastic cover out of the way, put our wrench up there, and remove those. Now we're going to remove the nut on the bottom of the upper control arm joint and get that out of the way. So on our disassembly of the lower strut bolts, it's going to look a little bit different than yours. We actually have a 2-inch leveling kit in here, so our bolts have to come through the top, whereas yours are going to come through the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and take those out now. Now that all of our bolts are off top and bottom of our strut, we can go ahead and remove that. Okay, so now we're going to work on disassembling our front strut. So we have it in our mounted coil compressor here, but first we're going to take a silver Sharpie and we're just going to draw a straight line all the way down here because we need to know how this is oriented for when we place it back inside of the strut. Now we can work on compressing this. Okay, so now that we have our coil compressed, we're going to want to take an adjustable wrench and attach it onto the top while using a fixed wrench in order to actually get the nut off itself. Okay, then once that nut is removed, the shock will slide out and separate from the coil. Now we will decompress the coil and start separating the top plates. Now that we've separated the top mounting plate from the coil and taken it out of the coil isolator, we're left with a polyurethane insulator with the top mounting studs and a brace up top. We're going to take a flathead screwdriver and a hammer. We're going to separate these two. Okay, now that we have just the top mounting plate with the studs in it, we have to beat these studs out in order to put our new ones in. All right, there we go. Now you're going to repeat that process on the other two studs. It might be a little bit tedious and will take quite a few swings with a hammer. If you have a press, that works too, and a little bit of penetrating oil will also help. Okay, so now that we have our studs out of our top mounting plate here, we're going to work on putting everything back together using the aftermarket parts. So on your polyurethane spacer, you're going to have two teeth located right here. Those are going to line up to the two holes on our first plate. So it's going to line up and sit right in there. Next, we're going to move on to this one, and you're going to put the head side of your bolts downward. Then we'll take our top plate once again, and you're going to want to make sure that you're going to be lining this up with the silver mark that you made earlier and the silver mark on the plastic piece. Okay, so once you have that sitting all back together, and your spacer should look like that, now we're going to work on putting this all back together with the coil isolator and the coil, and then we'll work on putting the spacer on top and getting it put back on the truck. Now that we've recompressed our coil and we put the shock back through, we can go ahead and put our nut on and work on tightening that up. Now we're going to decompress the coil now that our nut is back on and our shock is placed inside of our coil. Now we're going to remove our upper control arm in order to replace it with the new one. So we're going to take a 21mm wrench and ratchet. And we're going to work on removing these two bolts located on either side of the upper control arm. Now that the old upper control arm is out, we're going to work on putting the new one in. So we're going to get it lined up in place roughly. We're using the factory bolts to reinstall the upper control arm. Now before you can tighten up the bolts in your new upper control arm, you're going to need to take this tab that's included in your kit. You're going to rest it right here. Sit it right underneath the tube on that upper control arm, and that's the level that we need to tighten it up at. Once we tighten it up, we can remove that tab. So now that we've tightened up the two bolts on our upper control arm, we can go ahead and remove this temporary tab. And as you can see, it's in place right where it needs to be. While we're here, we can also go ahead and remove this pin from the castle nut and get ready to install our strut. Before you reinstall your strut back into your truck, make sure you install the larger spacer on top through the studs. Now we can go ahead and put it in the truck. So I went ahead and started the bolts on the bottom of the strut mount. It can be a little difficult to get those to line up, so it would be helpful if you had a floor jack or a buddy or something like that to help you line those holes up. But we're going to go ahead and tighten those up and then work towards the top. All right, so now that we've tightened up the bolts on the bottom, we're going to go ahead and tighten up our 2 bolts up here, and then once the truck's on the ground, then we can do the bolt under the hood. Okay, now we can work on reconnecting our tie rod. So go ahead and put it back through that hole, and you're going to want to go ahead and get it started. And then we'll tighten it up. All right, so a quick tip for getting the upper control arm bolt back through the spindle is if you take a pry bar and you can put it in the top bucket, use it to pry down in order to get your nut started. All right, now we can finish tightening it up with a wrench. Now we can finish putting our pin in through our castle nut, and then we're done with the upper control arm. Now we're going to put back our 10mm bolts that hold our ABS lines on, starting at the bottom of the spindle, and then we will work our way back up. Then we can put the one on the top back end of the spindle. Lastly, we're going to reinstall our bracket back on top of our new upper control arm. We're going to use the provided bolt and nut. And we'll go through and tighten all those up. All right, and then this is going to be a 11mm socket on our new provided bolt and nut. All right, now for our last bolt on the strut mount, we're going to put that nut back on top through the hood. Okay, so now that everything is on the truck and installed properly, we're going to make sure that everything is back to factory torque specs, but everything that you saw done here, you can repeat on the driver's side. Now we're going to be lifting the rear of the truck. Firstly, we have the axle supported with a jack, and now we're going to be working on taking off the factory nuts off of the factory U-bolts with a 21mm socket. Now we can remove the factory U-bolts and the U-bolt retainer. Now we're going to work on removing the factory shock. So we're going to do that by holding a wrench on one end and a socket on the other in order to remove the bottom bolt. Now we're going to use that same 20mm socket and we're going to remove the bolt on the top of the shock. And now we can remove the factory shock. Now we're going to put 2 C-clamps, one on either side of the axle, so that we can remove this bolt to remove our shim on the bottom before we can put our aftermarket block in. Now we're going to need to remove this bolt that's holding the leaves together. The best way to do that is if you get some vice grips and you're going to hold the bottom end of the bolt while we take a socket and twist the top. It's a little bit of a tedious process. Once the nut is off of the top, you can pull the bolt back through the bottom, and the shim is going to come with it. And we're going to remove our shim. Now with the shim removed, we're going to reinstall our bolt threaded side up. We're going to put the nut on, and just like we took it off, we're going to need to hold the bottom stud. Now with our new bolt back in, holding our leaf pack together, we're going to reinstall our aftermarket lift block with the pin side down going into the hole in the axle. Then we can raise our axle back up, aligning the bottom shank of the bolt into the hole on the lift block. Now with our lift block installed, we can go ahead and reinstall our included U-bolts. And we can remove our C-clamps. And when we reinstall our U-bolts, we're going to use the included washers and nuts. Once we have them evened up, we can go ahead and tighten them down. Remember to come back and torque these later. Now with our new shock, we're going to take our rubber bushings. Going to try to place it in there as best as you can by hand. It helps if you have some lubricating oil of some sort. And then we will take our sleeve, try to get that in there best as we can with our hand. Then we'll take a mallet. You'll try to get that sleeve as even as possible, and then we'll repeat the same thing on the opposite side of the shock. Now we're going to work on installing our new shock. So we're going to start with the piston side up. This is going to go into the sleeve on the frame. Now we're going to line up the bottom bolts on our shock. If it's not lining up right away with the shock all the way extended, you might need to adjust your jack in order to get the height just right. And that's it for our rear lift install. Make sure you torque everything back to factory torque specs and repeat on the opposite side. Now we're going to go get in alignment, and after 500 miles of drive time, we're going to make sure everything is still torqued down properly. Other than that, if you have any other questions, feel free to give us a call or visit us online. Thanks.